Hey y'all, Gary here with Tennessee Stands. Hey, there's a lot going around right now regarding the new Republican Party platform that was voted in yesterday, which would have been Monday on June 8th at the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee. And I just wanted to speak to a couple of things because the issue that a lot of conservatives are having with this new platform is it is absent of really strong language regarding marriage, number one, and number two, life. And when I say absent, it's absent the kind of language that was in the prior platform, which was last approved in 2016. In 2016, the platform at that time was 58 pages, extremely robust with constitutional language and arguments on several different principles. On marriage, the Republican Party platform was very clearly supportive of marriage being between one man and one woman and protecting biblical family values. The platform was vocally against the Obergefell ruling from 2015 and what an abomination to justice that was in terms of defending the family. So the 2016 platform was very strong on protecting family values and against same-sex marriage. The platform that has now been adopted, and by the way, what most people are seeing on Twitter and out in the news is this list of 20 points. In the platform, those 20 points have been expanded. I believe last I saw a draft. There's only drafts out right now, but the last draft I saw was about 16 pages. And the Trump campaign and the committee for the party has admitted that the new platform is significantly and intentionally more concise. So they've whittled it down to about 16 pages. So it lacks, I in my opinion, the argument, the principle, and the constitutional fortitude and the why, right, which is important behind some of these things that the Republican Party now stands for. But what it does not stand for is family values. It does not stand for marriage anymore. The new platform addresses transgenderism, gender identity. I believe it addresses the surgery on children for gender identity, or gender-affirming surgeries, I should say. And so those are all good things that the platform is taking a stance against that. But it has now abandoned its efforts to defend marriage. All right, that's point number one, and I'll set that aside. The bigger debate, I think, that most people are frustrated about, I shouldn't say bigger debate, they're the same. I will say the point that more people are frustrated about is that the new platform also abandons its drive for a national ban on abortion or a national amendment to defend life from conception. And this is what I want to sort of camp on right now and just give you some thoughts. It's worth understanding that the GOP, from a national perspective, according to its platform that it's now adopted, is no longer going to fight on marriage, and it's no longer going to fight on abortion. The new platform has relegated abortion to a state's issue in a post-Roe v. Wade world. And that's an interesting stance, one that I don't completely disagree with, which is why I want to give some thoughts on this, because I myself am even torn a little bit. I think I'm going to land the plane on where I believe the truth to be. But I think it's really important that we're able to discuss this on principle and constitutional terms and not emotional political discourse. And so let me start there. I want to lay out the difference between making decisions let me rephrase that. Making political arguments. That's the phrase I'm looking for. I want to pit political arguments against principled arguments. Let me explain what I mean by that. We make political arguments when we're trying to win, right? Political arguments are made based on consensus. They're made based on what most people believe. That's what political arguments are. It's why politicians do polls. They don't do polls necessarily because of certain things, and when they poll issues, because they believe certain things. They poll certain issues because they want to see where voters are. And depending upon what the polls say is going to impact what that politician says. And this is the argument right now, in my mind. This is the kind of argument that the Republican National Convention, that the national GOP is now making, and this is per the Trump campaign. He's been very, very clear on multiple occasions that Republicans, in his words, cannot win elections and will lose elections if we stick too principled and too hardcore to the abortion issue. So, based on that, the new platform has now taken a softened stance and has relegated it to the states. That is a political argument. So the political argument is, if we argue life from conception, if we work nationally to ban abortions, if we work constitutionally to defend life, then we will lose elections. Therefore, we must alter our position. And they have. Versus a principled argument, which believes something or argues a point simply because it's true. It doesn't matter about consensus, because let's be honest with ourselves. In the past, and I won't mention different issues, but in the past, just think about it a little bit. The majority of people, sometimes that have built consensus around a certain idea, have been wrong. In fact, oftentimes through humanity, the majority of people can also be wrong, which is why a principled argument does not depend on consensus. It depends on whether or not something is true. A principled argument also does not depend on outcomes. So here's the difference between principled and political. A political person, a person driving a political argument will do whatever it takes to win. It doesn't matter. They will lie, cheat, steal, manipulate, lambaste, squash the opponent. It doesn't matter, because the principle doesn't matter. What matters is winning. That's the political argument. The principled argument, the ends don't justify the means. It's not about winning. It's about making the right argument. Because from a Christian perspective, we would understand our duty, biblically, our duty is to the truth. Our duty is to what's right. The results belong to God. Whether or not we win the argument, whether or not we win the issue, whether or not we win the next election, has no bearing on whether or not we argue or stand firm to the truth. In a Christian world where God is sovereign, the ends belong to the Lord. He determines the outcomes. Our job is to the truth and to defend what is right. Okay, so that's the difference. What the Republican Party has chosen now in 2024, and this is the part to me that's bothersome, is it's chosen a political argument. Albeit, let's acknowledge that the Republican Party is a political party. I get that. And I think its main drive is to win. However, there is a very large sect of people that adhere to the Republican Party that are also principled conservatives and believers and constitutionalists, and are working to drive the party to a more conservative basis, not a political one, just one based on the truth. So I want to stick to this abortion conversation really for the remainder of this discussion, because this is the dichotomy of what we're seeing right now in the public discourse. I've often said, I won't lie. I've said in several public venues, I believe I've stated this on my podcast, I might have stated this in the commentary, that I'm a states' rights guy on almost all issues. In a post-Roe world, even when it comes to abortion, I do believe 100% that our best ability to protect all of our liberties, including the life of the unborn. So I agree with the party's direction in that sense. There is no question in my mind. I've said this several times from several stages across the state. I'm not really concerned who's in the White House. I'm truly not. Is life better under a Trump administration versus a Biden administration? 100%. Would I prefer Trump in office? Absolutely, no question. But the fact is, when it comes in the longevity of the fight for liberty, I'm not fighting at the federal level, because there'll be a new president in 4 years, probably be a Democrat. That's typically the way the pendulum swings. It always has. You know, why? Why does the pendulum swing? Because culture swings. You know, and that's never going to change. Our ability to defend a life, to defend freedom, to defend liberty, to defend our prosperity, to defend our future, I believe will always reside primarily at the state level, which is what makes our republic so great. It's what makes federalism so great. It's why I believe the United States has lasted as long as it has, and has, for the most part, held true to liberty, though we are seeing that to be fleeting very, very quickly. So I want to state for the record, yes, I agree, our best ability to defend life is at the state level. But I'm very disheartened to see that the Republican Party as a whole, nationally, is giving up on the life issue entirely. They're no longer interested in life as a federal issue. And here's my caution with that. If we don't believe that life is a federal issue, then we don't believe that life is a constitutional issue. That has to be the truth. That is a principled, that is a logical conclusion. And the argument is whether or not a life in the womb is a person and deserving of the constitutional protections of life, liberty, and property. I would argue from a conservative biblical basis that the Bible is clear that life begins at conception and that God is the author of life. The scripture says that he knew us in the womb. In the womb, God knew you and designed you in the womb. Also, it's awesome where the scripture points out that John the Baptist and Jesus recognized each other from the womb. You know, when the moms got together and was just hanging out, you know, the babies leaped for joy. In the womb, they recognized each other in the womb. What does that inform us? How does that inform believers? Well, it informs us that there are people inside the womb. And so the argument constitutionally now is whether, because the Constitution protects people, it defends the liberty of people. And so the argument is whether or not constitutional protections apply to a person in the womb. Is there a person in the womb? My answer is yes. And if your answer is yes, then that means that we must protect life. We would have a duty to protect life at the federal level. Why? Because the Constitution would demand it. The only way, and again, follow my logic here, the only way that abortion would be strictly a state's issue is per the 10th Amendment. And the only way the 10th Amendment would apply to abortion is if the Constitution does not protect the unborn. And the only way the Constitution could not protect the unborn is if we say the unborn are not persons. You following me? Because if the unborn are persons, then they must be protected by the Constitution. Therefore, the 10th Amendment does not necessarily push that duty down to the states. It is a federal responsibility to protect the life, liberty, and property of all persons, including the unborn. So here's to be clear, the Republican Party now in 2024 has abandoned that principle. They have not only abandoned the traditional biblical understanding of marriage, they have now abandoned the principle or the concept that an unborn child is a person deserving of constitutional protections. And here's where it gets more challenging, because if we now are going to say that abortion is in fact a state's right, it is purely a federal issue. It is purely a state issue and not a federal one. Then we are saying that unborn children are not people. They're not yet people until they're out of the womb. And so if we can't protect those persons at the federal level per the Constitution, then how necessarily do we protect them at the state level if they're not persons? Do you see where it makes that argument very, very difficult, doesn't it? Because now the Republican Party has to acknowledge to the left, well, we don't really believe these are people. And so the question that they'll throw in our face is then why is it murder to kill an unborn child if they're not a person? If they have no constitutional protections? I do believe that in the long run, this decision by the party puts life and our argument to defend life in great jeopardy. Why? Because we've lost the moral basis of our argument. Again, this is where we end up whenever we are choosing political arguments versus principled ones. And so when I look at the current platform, by the way, it's a great campaign platform. I mean, when I look at those 20 points, I've got to go back and look at them and think about them more deeply, but I don't think I disagree with any of the 20 points. I think those 20 points are going to be great for freedom, great for the economy, all those things. So I don't look at the platform necessarily as a whole as a bad thing. But what I am saying is it doesn't to me feel like an endearing platform. It feels like a campaign platform. This is not a constitutionally endearing platform that a principled people should take on into the future, primarily because it abandons morality. The thing to take away from where we are right now as a party is, in my view, the Republican Party is no longer a moral party. And that's dangerous. It concerns me. We are unwilling to put ourselves in the position of fighting on the moral issues because now we are scared to lose the argument politically. We are now so afraid of losing elections that we are unwilling to make the moral argument. We're unwilling to stand firmly on things that I think most of us believe to be true. I can belabor the point, but I wanted to put this out there because that is exactly where I believe we are right now with this new Republican platform and where we are now as a GOP. And so for everyone here in Tennessee, as we advocate issues, because we have issues come up and we have folks that say, well, it's in the Republican Party platform and Gary doesn't agree with the platform, blah, 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 blah. But just so you understand, everything that we fight for now, especially on the moral issues, are being deleted from the platform. The platform is never has been, and apparently from here on out never will be, a holistic view of what is true and what is right. That is unfortunate. That is unfortunate. The Republican Party is not a conservative party. It is a political party now designed to build consensus and win. And by the way, I've talked about this several times. That is the Bill Haslam way. That was from a podcast that came out, sponsored by Vanderbilt University. That is a very public stance of those who run the Republican Party here and finance the party in Tennessee. They don't want a moral majority. They want to build consensus. They want to broaden the base. But let me caution you. And just say, if the party's drive now is to build consensus, it will always move to the left. You got to hear me on this. A party that chooses a platform simply to win elections and build consensus with the population will always, based on the culture, move to the left. Always. It will never move to the right. Building consensus will never move us back to the right. Only moving back to principled truth, constitutional foundations and a scriptural firm basis on natural law will move us back to the right. We're in dangerous times, and it's unfortunate, in my opinion, to see where this platform has gone, to see a party that is willing to whittle down its platform from 58 pages to now 16, delete marriage, delete a federal protection on life. We're truly in perilous times, and our party is becoming just as immoral as our culture, and that's where we are.